Hi, I'm Dr. Kim Sage. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist. Welcome to my channel. I'm so glad you are here. We are talking about how our complicated childhoods often have a huge impact on our adult lives and relationships. Specifically how when we're still in the parent-adult parent-child relationship and or with our partners, how these sort of impacts of childhood play out in our adult lives. If you're new here, please consider subscribing and checking that little box, and that way you'll get notified when I post new videos. And also please check out 3 of my courses, the links are down below, on remothering the inner child and inner parent, really how to set up your life with exercises and videos and meditations and journal prompts, and a protocol on how to really set up the actual real parts of your life to heal your both inner child and truly your inner parent, because we're really both. And then my flagship course called Borderline and Narcissistic Parents, Healing and Dealing with Your Trauma. And yes, I do believe it is trauma, and that is why there are over 75 lessons, videos, journal prompts, exercises, meditations, affirmations to truly help validate you and your story and help you figure out how to map out a healing life for yourself. So I hope you'll check those out. So we're talking this week, as I've said, about and continuously about these impacts on our lives. And I want to talk today about anger and how much our fear of anger, if we were raised by untreated, narcissistic, borderline, emotionally immature, traumatically wounded types of parents who had an issue with anger and rage, and how much our fear of anger and their anger, and which often gets transferred from our parents to our partners, if our partners also have anger issues, how much that keeps us suffering and stuck in our relationships and in our lives. So the issue is that oftentimes anger can look different. And so for some people it was parents who outright raged and slammed cabinets and broke things and threw things or name called. For some, it might also be this silent treatment. They just shut you out for hours, days, even weeks at a time. It could be little passive-aggressive comments coming at you all of the time, this sort of underlying rage and aggression. But whatever it is, we never had any kind of healthy experience or exposure to the fact that, we all get angry. And it's okay to be angry. It's just not okay to hurt people, physically, emotionally, or otherwise when we're in our anger. And as a result of parents who were often angry and eggshell, I call type parents, we have learned to tiptoe around, to be hypervigilant, and to be caretakers who rotate around them to take care of them so that we can be okay. And so we're often sensitive. It's often called empathic as well, which I really think is just another name for attuning to really unsafe parents. But this emotional lack of predictability and chaos often really plays out when they're angry. And so we become adults who, number one, tend to avoid anger at all costs. We don't self-advocate. We don't speak up. We don't know how to push back, right? We're terrified of that. It gives us a lot of anxiety or stress. Now, the flip side is we might also be like our parents and mirror them. That's a different type conversation. But basically, I'm talking to those of us who don't really know how to do anger. So the first thing we often do is that we avoid anger altogether. We tiptoe around it. We don't speak up for ourselves. We don't self-advocate. We do everything we can to avoid it because any anger in our adult lives brings up those fears and hypervigilance of our own parents, however they dealt with their anger in whatever way. So for example, if your parents gave you the silent treatment and now your partner does that, it is extremely triggering. Yes, it's not yelling and screaming, but it is just as punishing and just as upsetting in many ways as other types of anger can be. And so what happens is they have used that behavior to control us. And when we're often more sensitive or more caretakers, they also know on some level, consciously or not, that we don't like anger because we will often, give them what they want, give in. Even if we kind of push back or have the silent treatment as well, their anger, their responsiveness overpowers us. And they know that we can't tolerate it because that's not who we are. And so we'll often give in, make up first, try to, move past it, whatever, but not really learning healthy conflict resolution skills, just trying to skip past the anger as fast as we can. So the more afraid we are of their anger, of our parents' anger, of our partner's anger, the more likely we are to be emotionally blackmailed, like I'm saying, and manipulated. And so part of the work is to learn to push back, to speak up, to set boundaries, which, I mean, that's just a sentence I said, which I know for many people is beyond difficult to do. That can take a year in therapy alone, just working on that, to be honest, because it's so terrifying and triggering if you had these kind of childhoods. And the problem is that oftentimes this issue with anger spreads into all your relationships. So it's not just your partner, it's also your boss, or maybe your kids. Maybe your parent was really angry, and now when your kids get angry, it triggers you. Or when you get really angry at them, you stuff it and don't express it the way you want, but then it comes out in other ways that you don't feel good about because you don't know how to do that. And so it's usually like just seeps into everything, and oftentimes is a very avoidant response. Or it might be the flip side where then you yell and you blow and you scream just like your parents. And then you feel a lot of shame for doing that. And that is also very wounding for kids. And so you know that's not good, but then you keep yourself stuck and you don't break the pattern either of how to not blow. So it can play out different ways. Or the big combo is that we take it and take it and take it, and then we blow. So we're kind of doing the avoidance and the blowing, which is also very, very common. And that doesn't feel good either. And so we want to look at what happens to us when we feel angry. We want to explore, where do I feel it in my body when someone's angry at me? Where do I feel it in my body when I'm angry? We want to learn to develop the tools to deal with our anger and, frankly, our anxiety. I often think that anxiety is like bubbling below the surface. We're hypervigilant. We're very, chronically like stressed. And so we can easily be irritable. In fact, we often see, for example, in men, when they're anxious, more anger than the typical symptoms. Even in more depression in men, we can see anger, because anger is more socially acceptable for men, not so much for women, at least at this point. So, but the point is that underlying mental health issues can be going on, and they can be kind of like whack-a-mole, funneling up through other things like anger. So you want to start with exploring how you feel when someone's mad at you and when you're mad. Question yourself, maybe journal about what keeps you from speaking up and saying something. How do you deal with your anger in general? What is your go-to strategy? And whatever strategy you use, what message are you sending to yourself about anger in general? Do you even believe you're allowed to be angry, or that we are allowed to be angry? And that is the bottom line question, is, do you believe you have a right to your anger? Maybe you didn't in childhood. My guess is if you were a caretaker, you did not. And so your work is beginning with honoring and validating that you're allowed to be angry. It is just about what you do with it, right? And how you express it. But I think it's really important to look at this one, because I do not believe any of us really taught how to deal with anger. And I think that all of us can have anger for different reasons, whether it's, repressed sadness or anxiety or a boundary violation that kind of like goes against our sense of self, that, or triggers a worthiness issue. Whatever it is an important emotion to explore. And so I would really encourage you to do that. So I hope this was helpful. Thank you so much for being here. Please don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you tomorrow. Take care and stay safe. Bye-bye.